There's a woman who figured out how to win by leaving the room. By the numbers, she is one of the most successful British artists who has ever lived. 4 Grammy Awards, a debut album that sold 10 million copies, a voice so distinct that entire genres got built in its shadow. In 2023, Rolling Stone put her on their list of the 200 greatest singers of all time. The Queen made her an officer of the Order of the British Empire, and then, years later, a commander of Aid. On paper, she is untouchable, but for the last 15 years, she has been almost completely invisible. No new album, no interviews, no social media, no comeback tour, no documentary, nothing. She hasn't put out a record in over a decade and a half, and she has said essentially nothing about it. So by every single rule this industry runs on, she should be a nostalgia act by now, a name you half remember, something filed under whatever happened to. Except this week, June 2026, a 30-year-old greatest hits album she basically walked away from did something that only one other record in her entire 40-year catalog has ever managed to do. Quietly, with zero promotion, in the most competitive music market on the planet. And that leaves us with a genuinely strange question. How does a person become more powerful by disappearing? Because this isn't a contradiction and it isn't luck. It's a strategy. It might be the most disciplined career in the history of popular music. This is the story of Sade. Let's start with the thing almost everyone gets wrong. I got it wrong for years myself. Sade is not a woman. Not exactly. Sade is a band. 4 people, a saxophonist, a keyboard player, a bassist, and a singer. The singer is Sade Adu, and the band simply took her middle name. So when you say, I love Sade, you are technically talking about a 4-piece group, not a solo star. And even the name itself became a small act of resistance, because when the music crossed the Atlantic, America couldn't pronounce it. People said Sade. They said it like it rhymed with made. It's Sade. 2 syllables, soft. The country fell in love with a voice it couldn't even say out loud, and somehow that only made her more mysterious. Hold on to that, because that blurred line between the woman and the band, between what people knew and what they didn't, is the first clue to how this whole disappearing act works. Her real story doesn't begin on a stage. It begins in Nigeria. Born in the city of Ibadan in 1959 to a Nigerian father and an English mother. When she was 4, the family moved to England, and she was raised mostly in Essex by her grandparents. And here's the part that quietly breaks the whole pop star myth. She never set out to sing. She studied fashion design. She worked as a designer. She modeled a little. Music wasn't the dream she chased. It was almost something that happened to her by accident.
That long ago. What did you do before you were a singer?
I made clothes, men's clothes.
Because the way it actually started is she joined a band called Pride as a backup singer. She spent 3 years touring the UK in that band from 1981, grinding it out on the road, sometimes literally driving the van herself. But in the middle of Pride's shows, there was this one small segment where she'd step up to the front and sing a few quieter, jazzier numbers she had written on her own. One of those songs was called Smooth Operator, and that song changed everything, but not in the way you'd expect. Record scouts heard it and they lost their minds. But they didn't want Pride. They wanted her, just her. Take the singer, leave the band. Therefore, she was handed the exact thing every struggling artist is supposed to pray for. Leave your friends behind. Sign the deal. Become a star. She said no. For 18 months, she flat out refused to walk away from the people she came up with. She only signed a deal when the label finally agreed to let her bring 3 of her bandmates along, the saxophonist, the keyboard player, and the bassist who, to this very day, are Sade. Before the fame, before she had any leverage at all, before there was a single guarantee any of it would work, she chose loyalty over the payday. Remember that choice, because it isn't a one-time thing, it's a pattern, and that pattern turns out to be the whole point. 1984, the debut album drops. It's called Diamond Life, 10 million copies sold, but the how matters far more than the number, because this was the era of enormous scents, enormous hair, enormous everything. The charts were loud and getting louder, and Sade's walked in and did the exact opposite. Where everyone else pushed, she pulled back. She made restraint sound expensive. She made silence sound like money. And that quiet had consequences nobody saw coming, because that sound got a name: Quiet Storm. Smooth, low-lit, grown and sophisticated airy R&B with real jazz in its bones. Therefore, an entire lineage traces straight back to her doorstep. The neo-soul movement of the 90s, Lauryn Hill, Maxwell, Erykah Badu, was built on a foundation she poured a decade earlier. She didn't just have hits, she moved the whole center of gravity of black music. Now let's be precise, because the singles tell a sneaky story. In the UK, her first single, Your Love Is King, was the big one. That's still her highest charting song at home. Smooth Operator only reached number 19 in Britain. But in America, Smooth Operator is the one that broke the door down. Top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. And underneath that gorgeous, seductive sound is something most people never clock. The song is about a con man, a smooth-talking criminal who uses women and breaks hearts coast to coast. The music is warm, the story is cold. That tension, beautiful surface, darkness underneath, is the entire Sade's signature. Today, that one song has racked up over 400 million streams on Spotify alone. But here's the part people never expect. The hip-hop world didn't just respect her, they studied her like scripture. Rakim, one of the greatest to ever touch a microphone, grew up on her voice and name-dropped Smooth Operator in his own rhymes.
Cause I'm N-E-F-F-E-C-T, a smooth operator operating correctly.
Missy Elliott has called it one of her favorite songs of all time. Aaliyah said she admired Sade because Sade stayed true to her style no matter what. And when Sade finally resurfaced in 2010, Kanye West publicly asked out loud how new Sade was somehow better than everything else on the shelf. Rick Ross put it as plainly as it can be put: there has never been a bad Sade track. So by 1986, she is 27 years old and she makes history. She becomes the first Nigerian-born artist ever to win a Grammy, Best New Artist. That is the industry's official stamp that says, you have arrived, you are one of us now. And she did not show up to collect it. Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg accepted the award on her behalf because she simply wasn't in the room. The single biggest validation night of her young career, the moment most artists would kill for, and she skipped it entirely. Now you could read that as arrogance, but watch what happens next, because it wasn't arrogance at all. It was that same pattern from before, and this time it hardens into a full-blown philosophy. Here is the first rule every artist is taught: stay visible or die. Feed the machine. Put out new music every couple of years. Tour constantly. Stay in the conversation, or the audience will forget you ever existed. So watch what Sade does with that rule. She breaks it completely. On purpose, for 40 years, 6 studio albums. That's it. 6 albums in 4 decades. She moves on her own clock and no one else's. Years of total silence, and then, only when she is good and ready, a record so meticulous and polished that the long wait somehow looks like it was the plan all along. Promise, in 1985, went to number 1 in both the UK and America. Lovers Rock won her another Grammy in 2001. Every few years, a masterpiece, and then she's gone again. And between those records, she doesn't just lie low, she genuinely vanishes. She lives on a farm out in the West Country of England in Somerset. She spent the pandemic out there quietly with her partner and her mother. No press machine, no comeback era, no documentary deal, no desperate algorithm-chasing grab at relevance. And by every logic this business runs on, that should have been the end of her. Disappear for 15 years and the algorithm buries you alive. New artists flood in every single day. Therefore, by all rights, she should be gone and forgotten. But she isn't gone. She is somehow everywhere, and that's the twist that makes absolutely no sense until you understand what she actually did. because she did the single most dangerous thing you can possibly do in modern culture. She let people miss her. She didn't flood the feed. She didn't chase a single trend. She stepped back so far and stayed back so long that the absence itself started doing the work for her. And absence, done right, is not disappearance. It's gravity. And this week, that gravity finally showed up on a chart, hidden inside a number that almost nobody noticed. In the UK, the official albums chart is the most competitive album ranking in the entire country. It tracks the most consumed full-length records in the whole nation. Week after week, streams and sales combined. Getting onto it at all is difficult. Staying on it is genuinely brutal because you're fighting every new release, every superstar, every viral moment all at once. And sitting way down in the deep end of that chart at number 96 is an album called simply The Best Of, a Sade Greatest Hits compilation. Now number 96 sounds like nothing. It sounds like an afterthought. So stay with me here, because the number that actually matters isn't 96, it's 52. Because as of this week, The Best Of has now appeared on that chart across 52 separate weeks. A full year on the board, on and off, cumulatively, stacked up across the decades, a whole calendar year of being one of the most consumed albums in Britain. But here's the detail that turns that statistic into something closer to a ghost story. This compilation first landed on that chart back in November of 1994, more than 30 years ago, and it keeps coming back. It refuses to leave. Streams on Spotify, plays on Apple Music, a steady trickle of purchases. An entirely new generation keeps discovering it and pulling it right back onto the national chart in a country where this woman hasn't promoted a single thing in years. Across the band's whole history, 9 different projects have charted in the UK. 9. But only 2 of them have ever spent a full 52 weeks on that ranking. The first was Diamond Life, the album that started it all back in the 80s, the very beginning. And now joining it, a greatest hits record that is old enough to rent a car. Only the second Sade album ever to reach this exact milestone. But think about the difference. Diamond Life got there on the way up, riding a massive promotional wave, brand new and everywhere. This one got there the hard way. 30 years of quiet, patient, word-of-mouth devotion, with absolutely no one pushing it and no one behind it. And that is the entire difference between a hit and whatever this is. A hit is loud and fast, and then it's gone. This is the rarer thing. This is permanence. So let's go all the way back to that strange question from the very start. How does someone become more powerful by disappearing? Here is the answer the entire story has been quietly building toward. She never chased the moment, therefore the moment can never leave her behind. She built music with no expiration date on it, no trend to date it, no gimmick to age it. Just that voice, that restraint, that impossible, effortless cool. And because she refused to flood the market, because she made you wait years for every record, every single song stayed precious. Think back through all of it. She said no to the easy deal to protect her friends. She skipped her own Grammy. She turned down the treadmill the entire industry runs on. She walked off the world's biggest stages and out onto a quiet farm in the fog. Every one of those was the wrong move by the official rulebook. But add them all up, 40 years later, and just look at the scoreboard. One of the most successful British women in the history of recorded music. A debut album that defined an entire genre. 4 Grammys, honors from the Crown, a permanent seat among the greatest singers who ever lived, and a greatest hits album that just quietly tied her own founding legend. 3 full decades after it was released, with zero promotion, powered by nothing but people who refused to stop pressing play. So in the end, Sade proved the one single thing that this entire algorithm age has completely forgotten. You do not have to be everywhere. You just have to be undeniable. She vanished, and somehow, she's still winning.